Hey there, everybody, and welcome to Bedtime Horror Stories, Episode 2. Now, today I've got some beautiful winter forest ambiance for you, water sounds, falling snow, and we're going to read a variety of horror stories for you. And of course, I've got my friend Fehn here to help me with the readings.
Yes, to lull you into the sweetest of nightmares.
Well, you heard it here. We're going to lull you into some sweet nightmares. Now, we're going to start with our story next time, all right? And I'll be kicking things off because it goes like this. Good evening, Nightcrawlers. I still can't believe that we have over 100 people in our streams now. Lady, Lore, Disco, Q, Livers, all my original crew. Can you guys believe this? Now, I'm touched you aren't surprised. You have to admit it happened fast. I hate to think Name Her Not had anything to do with it, but the Coming Soon video has over 10,000 views. At least she isn't alive to see it. That gives me peace. Besides, it doesn't matter why we all became friends. Only why we stay friends, right? Right.
The schedule is going to be a little tight now that my promotion is official, but I think we can fit Days of Night into one video if you're okay with another hour-long premiere. Somehow, I had a feeling you would be. I don't write often, but I had a weird nightmare that the sun stopped coming up, and it definitely feels like a horror story. Thanks, lady. I'm glad you enjoy them, but my plate is overflowing. Ah, sorry. I hope no one's volume was up. Yeah, it's okay, babe. Can you, yeah, can you take him? Shut the. I'm sorry, seriously. See what I mean? Chaos everywhere. I swear one of my ancestors pissed off a voodoo queen or something. On the bright side, you officially met Eddie. He's been dying to say hello, as you heard. Ah, that's a lot of heart emojis. He returns the sentiments, I assure you. Looks like it's about that time anyways. Good night, crawlers. I'll push you next time. Get it? Another edge crawler joke. I'm considering it my sign-off. Do you like it? Well, the masses have spoken, so saith they all.
6 days later, on another one of his night streams. Hello, my favorite nocturnal knee walkers. How's everyone tonight? Great. I know you're all surprised to see a stream today, but I need to discuss something important. I'm not angry. We understand you meant well. But someone submitted a sequel to Coming Soon. I see how some would think it's a good idea given the amount of attention it received. But the video wasn't released with that intention. Our family went through a extremely difficult time, and part of my healing process was to share that experience with a few close friends. I never dreamed it would become popular. And while I'm grateful for new friendships, it's not a story we wish to continue. And titling it next time was in poor taste. It's okay. As I said, I'm sure no ill will was intended. No, lady, I didn't recognize the email, and I'm not here to call anyone out, but moving forward, we appreciate if everyone can respect our wishes in this matter. And while we're here, Days of Night will premiere tomorrow at 7:30. I'm excited, but I'll push you all later, okay?
And now, on the next night. All right, let me have it. What did you think? I know it'll never be an HBO series, but I honestly kind of like this one. Ah, you guys are making me blush, but no, part two is definitely out of the question. My promotion came with longer hours, there's barely enough time to record as it is. Ah, that's hilarious, but sure, if we can get this channel monetized, I'll write all the sequels you want. In fact, if I can ever do this full time, we can have random stories on weeknights and series continuations on weekends. Not that I've been obsessively planning or anything, it was just an off the cuff type idea. Ah, only the truest of friends feed your delusions. The cold void that is my soul feels warmed and tingly. While everyone is particularly happy with me, I have a touch of bad news. Next week's premiere is cancelled for work travel. I know, I hate it too, but they're sending me to some corporate retreat, teamwork training. It honestly just sounds like a weekend by the lake. But either way, I won't have time to record. Maybe I can still get a few people shorts on TikTok. We'll see. I drive down Friday afternoon and come home Sunday evening. It's only 2 nights away from home. Don't tell anyone, but I'm going to miss Eddie so much already it hurts. Oh, and the rest, of course. But I guess that's it for now. Push you later.
2 weeks later, he streamed the following. I know you expected to hear from me sooner, and I feel terrible for making you all wait. As you've probably guessed, there is no story for tonight. Sorry about that, too. It doesn't feel like I'm being overly dramatic, but it will probably sound that way when I explain why. I never dreamed to find myself sharing another personal experience. And yet here we are. I thought hard about it, and honestly, I'm still not sure if I've made the right decision. But I can't allow one disturbed lurker to take this channel away. If I want to share something with my friends, then damn it, that's what I'm doing. If anyone would like to retrieve their alcohol or smokables, do so now. Everyone ready? Okay. So this retreat was 2 hours away at a lake in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't even show on Google Maps. It has a complicated Ooga Booga Tuga kind of name. There was no reception or Wi-Fi. They claimed it was another bonding aid. But I'm thinking it has more to do with the lack of availability. We shared 6 semi-decent cabins between 24 people. It could have been worse, space-wise. Splitting a bathroom with 3 strangers wasn't ideal, but they said it was somehow also a part of the bonding. Let's pretend that's less creepy than it sounds because we have a lot to cover. My bunkmate, he was a decent guy. I'd seen Gary around the office, but this was the first time we really spoke. Yeah, well, okay, maybe there is something to this bonding jazz, but we don't have to admit that elsewhere. The weird shit started when we met our cheerleader. Not cheerleader as in, those people at the Super Bowl, but our leader of cheer. It's exactly what it sounds like. Her name is Karen Newcomb. And she's easily the most hyper woman I've ever encountered. You never expect so much pep in a tiny package. I don't know if she had cocaine in her sugar or just makes the kind of money that buys happiness. Either way, I want some of whatever she was having. I played their game and smiled with social grace like my livelihood depended on it because quite frankly it did. But honestly, it wasn't worth it. Saturday morning, we were gathered by the lake when Karen introduced herself and got right to work.
We paired off with our bunkmates, and we were forced to do the falling backward trust exercise, but she had an extra spin. The catcher asked their partner a personal question, which was answered after the faller was caught. Sounds simple enough if you're okay sharing your personal information with strangers, but I'm not too keen on it these days. A few jerks thought it was funny to drift towards awkward questions, but when Karen encouraged secret sharing, some people got downright brutal. My dislike for the cheer queen evolved to hate faster than I normally judge character flaws, but I can't stand cruelty for sport. I was extremely lucky to have Gary as a partner. We laid low, keeping it simple with birthdays and pet names while tempers were tested around us. That woman thrived on drama, or she's a master of uniting people under a common enemy. Either way, no thanks. She enjoyed a long day of torturing us with various mindfucks before we were finally released for dinner and evening recreation, which supposedly meant we could do whatever we wanted until bed. The only thing I cared about, though, was sleep. The longer I slept, the faster this awful time passed. It was 8 p.m. or so when I laid down and fell into a dreamless abyss, but soon I found myself with the bladder screaming for release. I remained in a half-delirious state while trying to estimate the amount of time passed and if I were still alone. After several silent minutes, I felt confident in my solitude and mentally prepared for a mad robeless dash to the restroom. There's no way to convey how it felt to be certain I was alone, sleeping, and to open my eyes and have a face mere inches from my own. In one instant, I took in her hot, peppermint breath and stray lipstick. She was smirking. As she slowly backed away, I felt myself shrinking into the corner, pushing my body against the wall to maximize the small distance between us. absolutely violated. There's no other word. Then she had the nerve to pretend her actions were completely reasonable. She wanted to know why I wasn't interacting with the group. So, I asked, can you please define recreation? I agreed to go purely to make her leave faster. While dressing, I saw that it was 10:15 and almost got back in bed. The only thing that stopped me was the fear of Karen's return. But when I stepped into the dimly lit night, I almost bumped into her. She was kind enough to wait for me in case I had difficulties finding the large bonfire. We couldn't just walk in silence either. She asked increasingly private questions, focusing on how I spend free time. I tried saying basic things like sports, but she kept nagging for a specific answer. Finally, I lost her by squeezing into a log between Gary and the fat guy. You'll never guess what activity Karen felt the need to drag me out there for. Ghost stories. Yep, I swear before all the gods of light and dark, she forced me out of bed to insist that I tell the first tale. Well, I wasn't having it, no way. If she knew about this channel, she would have to admit it, but I wasn't. I told her horror wasn't really my thing, and that even if it were, I wouldn't feel comfortable playing storyteller. Most impressive was my serious demeanor. I think the right amount of pressure can make anyone a good liar. It was clear the others were growing uncomfortable at her relentless insistence, but I'm the only one who understood the flash of fury that crossed her otherwise composed face. When her dark eyes locked onto mine, I physically recoiled. Every time I stole a glance in her direction, she was staring at me. By this point, there was little doubt as to her awareness of the channel. The only mystery remaining was that of her intentions. I mean, clearly she's not a fan, right? We weren't allowed to retire until midnight anyways. It was ridiculous.
At dawn, a loud trumpet woke us for breakfast. Roughly 100 yards behind the cabins stood a larger house where we gathered for meals. It was also where Karen slept, so I didn't like to be near it on principle. The day was only the normal kind of terrible. Aside from a few stray comments and suspicious looks, Cheer Queen didn't push me too far. That is to say, until that night's campfire. I wasn't dumb enough to believe the recreation lie again. This time I followed the pack like a good little sheep. We went through the scary story dance again, until I finally told the shortest possible version of "The call is coming from inside the house." I swear I got it done in 2 minutes, and Karen's look of angry disappointment was worth every second. I'll admit, when we were finally allowed to retire, I was feeling pretty smug. My brain should have been on autopilot, performing the minimum requirements necessary to retain my job, not going into overdrive and participating in head games with likely unstable individuals. But if I had to do the work anyway, I was pleased with the victory. How I was ignorant enough to believe it was over, I'll never understand. Maybe I was just relieved to know that it was our last night in that hellhole. I would have gotten into my car that very second, job be damned. I was only asleep for an hour when a soft noise woke me. At first I had tried to ignore it, thinking it was one of the guys in the bathroom. But the more I listened, the more defined it became. Finally, during a brief pause in Gary's snoring, I recognized the sound of fingernails on glass. Tapping. Obviously, my first thought was Karen. But the logical part of me thought, no, that's too crazy. I'm disappointed in myself, to say the least. Slowly, knowing the window was in my direct line of sight, I peeked open with one eye, just enough to reveal a blurry shape across the bottom panes. To see it clearly, I wiped away fresh eye goop, and my vision focused in time to see a person ducking out of sight. Even without distinguishable features, it was obviously Karen. By then, I was furious. I rushed to the window, trying to catch a glimpse of her direction, and saw movement in the next cabin's hedges. I was putting on my last boot when I finally came to my senses. What would happen if a large man ran to confront a tiny woman in the middle of the night? How would things look to outside parties? I'll never know if that was her plan or not, but I don't care. For 20 minutes I laid staring at the window before drifting back to sleep. I woke to more tapping shortly after 3 a.m. When does she sleep? This time, I leapt from bed in one clumsy motion, hoping to give Karen a good scare. I'm really losing my mind. That bitch got me so wound up that I saw name her not sorry face. Clear as day. For the split second, she remained visible. I couldn't sleep again after that, and I wasn't okay at all Sunday. Gary thought it was a nightmare since he snored too loud to wake, and Karen kept winking at me. I felt like I would snap any second. When we were finally released, I raced home like someone was chasing me, constantly checking my mirrors for signs of pursuit. I thought I'd be okay after making it home, but the nightmares and paranoia are back in full swing. I thought I was finally past all that. Anyway, that's why it's been so long. I'll get something special prepared to push you next week. For now, I've kept you too long. Thanks for listening, crawlers. I'll see you next week.
And 1 week later. Hey there, night crawlers. Sorry I haven't been around much this week, but no matter what, you were getting a story. I hoped you liked Meepers Keepers as much as I did, if nothing else. It's original. That's great to hear. I wouldn't mind a few more from that author. I'm sorry, lady. I know I don't sound like my usual self, but I really am trying. Things haven't exactly been better since last time we spoke. Aside from increasingly annoying nightmares, we woke to find a gutted hog lying across our driveway yesterday. You guessed it, Lore, just out of camera shot. I'm sorry, are there any of you who think a wild animal coincidentally killed it there? Because that's what the police think, but I swear. Nope, not doing it. I'm getting worked up again. Nah, seriously, don't worry about us. Fine. It's the principle of the matter. Like, when is all of this going to end? Oh, you know what, Disco. I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. Go to bed early. My brain needs to stop, just for a bit. But have no fear. Next week's video will be here. I'll put you next time.
4 days later, on a shorter stream, you hear this. Are you out there, bitch? And the very next morning after that incident. Hey, to those of you unfortunate enough to witness the incident before it was deleted, just know I humbly, sincerely apologize. I've never been more ashamed of my actions, and it will never happen again. To those of you who did not see it, consider yourself lucky. Yesterday was particularly hard for our family, and as a result, I drank a bit too much. At 1 a.m., Drunk Edge decided to start a stream again. I cannot express the depths of my remorse. I appreciate your patience and understanding more than you know. My little episode cost me 4 subs, but I expected more. At least I caught one break with this happening on the weekend. There's no way I could have made it to work feeling this way. Aiden had a ball game last night, so we didn't make it home until late. I immediately knew something was wrong because Eddie ran to greet us as we came down the driveway. He's never left outside. He's treated exactly the same as our sons. When he ran through the headlights, I was mortified to see dark crimson stains on his head and chest. Amber gasped loudly, and I knew she saw it too. We shared a knowing glance at the boys, relieved to find headphones on, and their glazed stares concentrated on, glowing screens. I parked without waiting for the garage to open and frantically searched Eddie for injuries. He didn't have a scratch on him. Someone else's blood was caked into his fur, especially around his mouth. I signaled Amber to wait in the car and cautiously crept alongside the house. My legs felt like I was walking underwater, and when I saw the front door swinging in the breeze, I almost noped out of there.
I looked at Eddie once more and believed he seemed a little too happy. If someone were still here, alive, the dog would be on top of them. But instead he was kinda strutting. A closer inspection of the front door left no doubt it was kicked in, but nothing else seemed to be disturbed. I checked every nook and closet twice before giving the all clear to Amber and the boys. I ran to the monitors next, eager to see what the... And I was surprised to see 6 blank squares amongst the 10. Until that point, shock was prevailing motion, but at the sight of the camera fuckery, I lost it. It took only a moment to confirm they were gone. I watched the entire footage on my laptop. At 11 a.m., when the house was sure to be empty anyways, a dirty, homeless man drunkenly stumbled into view from our long driveway. He had greasy, unkempt hair, red flannel button-up, and black jeans that were riddled with holes. In his hand was a scrap of paper he checked often, and from the way he systematically removed each camera, game cams included, it's safe to bet it listed their locations exactly. From that point on, we have only one view of the front door from our entry hall. Nothing more happens for 11 minutes. Then, suddenly, there's a loud crash as the door is kicked in. The homeless man could be seen holding what looked to be a handful of raw meat. Instantly, loud, furious barking erupted, and the intruder shakily held his offering aloft. Well, Eddie was having none of it, and he didn't hesitate to latch on to the hobo. You could hear the man's arm break as his screams filled the air. He lashed out in desperation, but he couldn't break the pit's hold. Finally, after falling to the ground, he grabbed a chunk of splintered wood. Somehow he managed to free himself for a split second, but when Eddie lunged for another bite, he found the intruder's crotch. At that moment, I almost felt bad for the guy. Eventually, he gave up fighting in favor of retreat, using his remaining arm and legs to drag himself away. Supposedly, whoever brought him here. Around this time, thanks to enhanced audio, if you listen very, very carefully, you'll hear a car peeling out as it leaves him behind.
26 minutes after Eddie and the intruder exited the camera's view, the good boy returned with the previously mentioned strut. You'll be glad to hear he has since been treated to a ribeye of the finest quality for his unwavering loyalty and bravery. We called the police, and yes, we are as sick of them as they are of us. They were less than polite until the body was discovered tangled in the backyard shrubbery, which also happens to be Eddie's favorite place to hide bones. Just FYI. After that, they were forced to actually investigate. Now you know everything we know, officially anyway. I'm sure I'm not the only one thinking about Karen. I just don't understand why. Why would she do any of this, or the stuff from the lake for that matter? I'll update you when we know more. Alright? Thanks, guys. I'll push you all later, okay? And then on the next night, immediately another stream. Goes like this. This was unexpected. I'm sorry I couldn't give you more notice, but it's really good to see that my closest friends are here since this is specifically for you. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm falling apart. We've had another incident and Amber wants me to quit the channel. I know, trust me, I know. I don't want this either, but it's putting my family at risk. Do you know how insane that sounds? Oh, God. The thing with Name Her, fuck it, the thing with Turner was a 1 in a billion chance. I'm not famous, probably never will be. But that psycho bitch decided to fixate on me for whatever reason. Fine. Even though it took over 6 months just to physically recover, it doesn't matter because she's dead, gone, shat out by a bear and fertilizing these very woods. My family never blamed me for what we went through, not once, but I could tell they weren't thrilled when I started recording again. They know how important this is to me, so they kept silent, yet here we are again. I'm not the only one who still has nightmares, we all do. Everyone except for Eddie. I'd really hate to know where we'd be if it weren't for him. Honestly, I'd have to be a selfish bastard to keep doing this, especially after last night. Fuck it. If this is our final stream, then let's go out with a bang. How's that sound? I don't throw around the L word often, but I really do love you guys. I'm glad it's just a few of us here tonight, like the old days. Well, let's do this right. Go get your voices and settle in. By the time the last official vehicle left, it was almost midnight. The boys were in bed, Eddie included, and I wanted nothing more than to follow suit. Unfortunately, I had security measures to enforce. I know you don't want to think about expenses when it comes to protecting your family, and that's obvious for people who have money, but we need food too. When Turner died, there was no reason to expand on what we had. Anyway, I was already determined to call ADT first thing, but in the meantime, I decided to move 2 cameras outside. The gun's weight was comforting, but Eddie was securely tucked with corner, and he was my preferred defense.
I didn't try anything fancy. It was enough to have the driveway and house covered. Though it shames me to admit it really did seem like Karen would stay away after such a massive failure. She got a man killed, for fuck's sake. Ugh, when placing the last camera, I couldn't find a flat surface, and I didn't feel like dragging out the ladder. There's a small crevice near the corner, just barely out of reach, where I thought it would balance. So I used the gutter to pull myself up. As you would probably suspect it fell, all the way to the ground, right along with me. Initially, I thought the noise came from that, but when another loud bang sounded in unison with the shattering glass, I began to understand. Then Amber screamed in a gut-wrenching way I've never heard before, and I knew a fear not even Paige fucking Turner managed to instill. I had another one of those episodes where everything seemed slow and clear. As two final shots destroyed another window, I rolled into the bushes, careful to keep my head to the ground. Once there, I heard retreating footsteps and almost pursued, but I couldn't delay checking in on my family. On the slowest run of my life, I noticed two broken windows, our bedroom and Connor's. I hope you can understand how literal I'm being when I say it felt like my organs were contracting into a single fine point. Inside, I almost felt relief at the sound of Amber's fresh sobs coming from upstairs. It meant she wasn't lying dead in our bedroom. And then I remembered the look of Connor's shattered window, and I began the next leg of an eternal sprint. The first thing I saw when entering my son's room was the red speckled stuffing scattered across his bed. It was like walking through a picture frame. Everything was frozen in place, awaiting inspection. Next, I spied the hole in his pillow. But there was no blood on that spot, only white fluff. Finally, I felt the hard pull on my arm and realized the faint buzzing sound was actually a voice.
Aiden was talking. I couldn't make out his words, but he was pointing. I turned to the indicated direction to see Amber rocking Connor, with Eddie at their feet. Con had his arms wrapped around his mother, and that's when I saw where the blood came from. I'm at my limit for reliving this nightmare. So let me skip the rest of the tears and explain what we now know. Police suspect Karen found herself a new homeless man because there were two shooters. One had a high vantage point, probably climbed a tree, while the other was on the ground. The first shot would have killed me had the gutter not broken, and the third and fourth went through our bedroom window, but Amber was already upstairs by then. The second bullet went through Connor's pillow, exactly where his head lay moments before. He didn't know what was happening. He woke up to Eddie biting his wrist, dragging him from bed. The blood was from his arm. Needless to say, yeah, I'm sorry. I really need to go now. 3 months later, the man returns. Hi there, Nightcrawlers. Shit, I've missed you so much. Thank you for being here. I know I sounded pretty rough the last time we spoke, but I'm 7 weeks sober today. While I wouldn't go so far as to say we're okay, we are better. And after the last few months, that's a welcome improvement. I gave you a few details via Twitter when it all happened, but now, with my family's blessing, I would like to give you the full story. We need to start 4 days after our last stream. I knew that Karen chick would be back. It's just how my luck works, and I got the idea to check around the woods. I left work early without telling Amber, and took Eddie for a long walk through the forest. About a mile in, just as I was preparing to turn back, I saw something strange hanging from a branch. The closer I came, the more I saw. Spread throughout the trees like a bad Blair Witch ripoff, there were bundles of 3 sticks tied together. Imagine laying 2 into an X shape, then putting a third straight down the middle. There were dozens. At first I thought, okay, crazy bitch did this just to freak me out, and I think that was a reasonable assumption to make, even now. It seemed like a smart way to ensure someone would stick to a certain path, one where a few bear traps were concealed, maybe. Well, I felt smart for thinking of it, even if we didn't find any. Using a long stick for a staff, I continued following the strange idols, although keeping Eddie behind me was a challenge. He instinctively wanted to be in front, but I'd never forgive myself if he got hurt out there. The anger I felt was overwhelming. The audacity. Someone was possessed to go through such lengths.
For half a mile, we continued until the path diverged to each side, with the idols becoming larger and more frequent. There had to be hundreds more hanging in the branches to encircle a quarter-acre clearing I'd never noticed. It was well hidden. The surrounding foliage was dense, and the trees bent to form a canopy that concealed it from above. That's when I noticed new shapes mixed in amongst the stick figures. In addition to the triangles, there were small bundles of straw twisted and wrapped in twine. I didn't touch any of it. In fact, I'd already planned to pay a teenager to take all of it down. It's pretty amazing how smart Eddie is. I squatted low, carefully creeping to the clearing's edge, and he laid flat next to me. I'm not sure what I expected to see, but never in my wildest dreams did I imagine. On the opposite side from where we sat, a crude shelter was erected. Several tree trunks stood scattered around a fire pit, serving as tables and chairs, but there was no movement in sight. We waited about 20 minutes before entering the clearing, just to be sure. And as we got closer, I started to notice the stumps were covered in red stains.
That's when I remembered the dead hog. And it made sense, you know. If she was hiding way out here, she'd need to hunt. But then I turned my attention to the shelter. It incorporated trees as walls, and she did an impressive job stacking logs between them. When she was finished, she stuffed the cracks with moss and mud. It looked exactly like what they build on those survival shows. That thing took serious work and dedication. It was terrifying to think how long she must have spent building it. Eddie wouldn't go inside. Instead, he stood at the entrance, whimpering. I gave him a comfort rub before proceeding alone, and saw a pallet of soft leaves in one corner, split logs being used as makeshift shelves, and a horrifying altar at the opposite side. Real talk, it creeped me out. It creeped me the fuck out before I even approached. It was made from antlers and bones. In the end, we learned it was a mixture of deer, human, and boar, but a wider assortment of smaller bones hung in various places. In the center of all this, framed for display, was Heather's severed head. Sorry, you guys remember her as Karen, but I'm getting to that. The takeaway here was, if she was dead, who else was out there? I didn't want to see anymore. We left quickly, not stopping until we were safely back home. We endured yet another round of emergency vehicles flooding our property as police dissected the new crime scene, but they remained as secretive as ever. The only thing I'll say in their favor is they left 2 squad cars to watch our home that night, one on each side of the house. Sleep came unexpectedly fast, considering my level of anxiety, but eventually, exhaustion conquers all. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but no one dared say it aloud. What if Turner didn't die? What if she's been out there, hiding in the forest like a secret neighbor? It was hard to imagine any other explanation. I tossed and turned from a terrible nightmare where Paige was pointing a gun at Aiden while I begged her to shoot me instead, and then she fired. I watched, mortified as my oldest son's body was riddled with bullets, blood spraying as I ran to him. But it was too late. I saw the instant the life left his eyes as I held his corpse in my arms. Amber suddenly appeared, screaming and pulling me away. More bangs brought me to awareness. I was dreaming, but Amber's screams were real. There was an honest gunfight happening outside. We raced from the room, staying low as possible to reach the boys. Images of Connor's ruined pillow flashed through my mind as I vowed to adopt a second pup. Thankfully, we heard the first window shatter after we squeezed everyone in the bathtub. Shots fired intermittently for over 5 minutes before stopping. It was 20 minutes after that we received the all clear. One man was dead, his head popped like a balloon, and one was injured, but luckily he's fully recovered now. The manhunt continued well into the daylight hours, but the shooter wasn't found.
Over the next few days, we learned about the strange setup in the woods, but the more we learned, the more terrified we became. They found DNA from 2 people out there. One belonged to Paige Turner. That's right, it was confirmed. The bitch lived. The dead woman wasn't in the system, and she wasn't Karen Newcomb, but they could tell she was Paige's sister. From there, they found the information for Turner. After the interviews with friends and family, we learned Heather came to Michigan to help her poor sister get back on her feet. She was under the impression a con artist scammed her out of her life savings, and I'll bet you can't guess who she blamed in that story. Yes, me. At some point, Heather found Paige's little campground, and I guess she outlived her usefulness. Oh, but wait, it gets better. Paige is an honest-to-God witch. She believed in the whole Wiccan, Paga, voodoo ritual stuff. I mean, I'm not dissing it or anything. I know it's a legitimate practice full of really cool beliefs. But this bitch was obviously not that kind of practitioner. She didn't hang all those idols to freak me out. She did it because she genuinely believed in their power. What she expected them to do, I have no clue, but they're long gone now. Removed for evidence. I didn't even need to pay a kid. It probably goes without saying, but she also submitted the Next Time sequel. I should have known that garbage was her doing. Aside from the news updates, it was a peaceful 2 weeks. Enough so that the police couldn't continue wasting their manpower. I'm sure that's exactly what she was waiting for, too. We have the most expensive package ADT offers, and moved a cot into Aiden's room so Eddie could sleep with both boys. I even moved a bureau to block the window, but it didn't make me feel any better.
I had my cell phone dialed to 911, ready to press call at the first sign of trouble. Sleep wasn't a problem. Our protection was gone, and I was sure Turner knew that. A bottle of Benadryl couldn't have put me down. We were trying to have a semblance of a normal evening and decided to watch a movie before bed. None of us could handle too much action, so we were happy to let Connor choose one of his cartoons. I pretended to laugh at a bunch of fish jumping over a wall for 2 hours while I studied the camera app intently, watching for any hint of movement. When the movie ended and the TV was off, a high-pitched voice filled the room. It was coming from the camera. That bitch hacked into our Wi-Fi. Eddie was immediately alert, looking around nervously while trying to keep us in sight. I'm sure you've heard the Nightmare on Elm Street rhyme. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. Well, she was singing that, but substituting her own name. She had to be close. Instead of waiting to see what happened next, Amber called the police, and I released the gun's safety before heading outside. I mentally prepared myself to shoot on sight. All I cared about was stopping her before she reached my family. I tried to imagine where I would hide, and I thought of only one place, the treehouse. It wasn't used, but it was too dangerous to play in when I was a kid, and it was never torn down. Most of the boards were too rotten to step on, and half of the roof was missing, but a small person could hide there if they were careful. I tried to peer around the corner without stepping into sight, but couldn't see inside. Crawling along the hedges didn't conceal me from view. Halfway across, a bullet whipped past and slammed into the brick behind me. Debris sprayed my head, and I thought that was what cut me, but doctors say the wound is more conducive with a bullet grazing.
The shot definitely came from the treehouse. I made the scariest dash of my life as I dove through the open yard to take cover behind our above-ground pool. More bullets sped past, but I somehow escaped injury. I was close enough to hear her now. She told them I was dead, shot down, and killed instantly. I couldn't stand the thought of my wife and children, so close yet thinking the worst. I acted on reflex without hesitation. She's lying. I'm fine, I screamed, hoping they heard. Next, she fired 2 more rounds, and I heard both puncture the pool. As the water leaked out, I shot 4 into the treehouse and was rewarded with an ear-splitting scream on number 3. No more shots were fired, and I stayed right where I was until the police arrived. They found her unconscious, and I was extremely disappointed to watch them load her onto an ambulance. But at least she can't hurt us anymore. Plus, she has a nice chest scar to match the one in her gut. I was only 5 inches from her heart. I hate to admit it's a little impressive that she survived in the woods, injured for so long, but maybe there's something to that Wicca stuff. Who knows? Now we have family therapy twice a month, and honestly, it's really helping. The boys were skeptical in the beginning, but we were desperate. We didn't know what else to do. While I would be happier if Turner was dead, I'll have to settle for max security mental institution. It's unlikely she'll ever leave that place alive. Her sister was her only relative, still in touch, but with Heather dead, she'll be completely alone now. Honestly, I can't say I'm sorry. Look, I don't know what the future holds for this channel, and while I'm not ready to go back to my weekly videos, I do hope I can work my way up to it. I've had an easier time with the stream than expected. Maybe, just maybe, we can get a new story up before the month is over. Nothing too long, just something simple to get my feet wet. If you have any suggestions, send them my way. Thanks again, crawlers. I can't wait to push you next time.
And that brings us to the end of that story. A very interesting tale of a man with a YouTube channel getting stalked by a witch and nearly killed. Huh. You know, I have to say, Fehn, kind of makes me worried about my YouTube channel. Streamer, fixated
I had
female.
you perfectly in mind when, I sent it to you.
Uh-huh. Grand, thank you for terrifying me before my bedtime. Jesus. Well, okay. If somebody calls you, just know that it's because I'm getting stalked. All right, the next story we have for you, crawlers, is the Dollhouse Murder. All right. I don't know what to expect with this one. Fehn's found all these stories, but honestly, she's scaring me probably as much as she's scaring you. All right, let's have a look at the Dollhouse Murder. The story starts like this. My mouth was covered by my older brother's hand, shallow, panicked breaths escaping between the sweat between the cracks of his fingers. Both of us whimpering underneath our house in the crawl space. Our sweatpants and Fanshawe t-shirts covered in spiderwebs, dirt, and blood. I'm crying underneath his hand. I know I'm crying inside the cusp of his grip as he holds me close. The sound of his footsteps, they stomp louder above us. He was inside. He's right above us, I think to myself, squeezing hold of my brother's arm with my bloodied hands. I look to him in the darkness. All I can see is the green in his eye when the moonlight skims past between dark clouds, creeping through the cracks of the grating and reflecting off his iris. My heart sank into my stomach when the sounds of tapping happened directly above us. We could hear the soft snicker, like some sort of personal deranged victory. I wake up, clammy hands and a heartbeat racing as if to escape a now fading memory. As I sit upright in this bed, I feel cold, alone. I'm still there. I'm still stuck in that moment. When the officers found the scene of the crime, they asked me how it all happened. In truth, I barely remember them arriving. Between the shock and the blood loss, the memory comes faded. The words said, inaudible.
It was nearly 7 months ago that I had the encounter with the serial killer, which has put me in protective custody and moved me far from my home of London, Ontario. Each day I wake up at nearly 5 in the afternoon, since now I won't sleep until my eyes cave from exhaustion around 8 in the morning. What the documentaries rarely tell you, what survivors seem to never say, is that when you live through the horror, the hell of the encounter with a serial killer, they never tell you how, regardless whether you live or die, you still become theirs. They still own your thoughts, even just for a fleeting moment, or throughout the night, such as myself. The perversion on some is the belief of collection, their victims, to own them, to control them, to have them, a sycophant to their own murderous self-believed desire and impulse. This is my story of what happened on July 15th, 2015.
There was no secret that a serial killer called the Dollhouse Murderer had been active in the news. He traveled between London and Strathroy, murdering random victims. Never an age, gender, place of employment, hair color that he sought after in his trail of slayings. The only factor was the area. Middlesex country. But that is far from an easy net to cover. His only pattern, his gruesome pattern that he would leave behind, was a dollhouse. He would take a body part, or hair, fingernails, eyelashes, some gruesome piece of a person he would collect, and when you opened the dollhouse, you would find a porcelain copy of whatever he took. That was his calling card. When my mom heard the news, she took us out of London and to our cottage in Hanover. A slowly growing town with a beautiful landscape and a river that ran up to our little run-down cottage house. That was our true home. It was not a rich person cottage with lighting, electricity, and fresh paint. It was a simple wood house, cedarwood finish that was slowly wearing off.
Still, it was our home, our escape. Our father was still in London. He unfortunately did not receive his vacation time from his job at the Honda plant. So Mom, my brother Andy, and I, Sarah, made our way to the cottage. The day was beautiful, a hot, sunny day. Mom was out for a stroll, soaking her feet in the river, basking in the sun, while Andy and I were already at war with each other who got on the unicorn floaty. I did, by the way. Andy was just starting his apprenticeship in plumbing, and I was just entering my first year of high school. As a gift for me, Andy brought me some of his college sweatpants and shirts, which were roughly 3 sizes too big, but they made perfect pajamas. Mom just loved that her 2 babies were wearing matching clothes. She constantly teased us about it. We started a fire when the cold air began to come up through and the sun began to fade. Mom fired up barbecue and made us some amazing ribs and a honey barbecue sauce, along with fried taters and an absurd, unnecessary amount of onions. I love her so much. We sat at the fire, naturally making fun of Dad. The smell of the wood burning, Mom and Andy drinking moose head, one tall boy after another. The crackling and hissing the fire would bellow, and we threw pine needles into the flame because Mom wanted nature's reviews.
When the moon began to settle in and the sky beamed with stars, we watched the fireflies flicker and do their illuminated dance in the starry night. I loved this place so much. The coy wolves howling in the distance and the wind rustling between the trees in the twilight of this natural harmony. We stayed by the fire for another hour before we heard a squealing yelp from the distance. The coy wolves were done singing, now that the harmony had stopped, and what was likely a fight over their dinner had started. I quickly dozed off on the couch, while my mom and Andy took to their own rooms after a heated game of exploding kittens. I remember sleeping so peacefully until I heard what would change me for the rest of my life. No, 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 no. My mom shrieked from the door window, repeatedly locking it quickly. Mom? Andy asked, scratching his tired eyes. What's wrong? Mom was shaking so bad. I'd never seen her scared before. Now I was nearly crying. I could see tears forming in hers. I could see her chest moving in and out. She was trying to control her breathing. I looked up from the couch and I could barely make out the fireplace, a few embers still clinging to life. The wind would catch the embers, the flame would give off a bright enough glow. For a fleeting moment I could see it. An open dollhouse sat outside, standing there, 2 feet tall, the dying embers of the fire illuminating its creepy windows.
A knock came from the sliding door behind us. His face pale, clear, blue eyes that were wide open, pupils wide and dilated. He had this unwelcoming, horrid smile. He was wearing a black hoodie with a camo toque, along with faded, dirt-covered blue jeans, blood all over them. His face pressed against the window, his smile glazing over us in a putrid, perverse manner. He jammed his fingers on the glass and pointed at my brother, then slid his dirty, bloody finger across the glass, causing it to screech until the tip of his finger was pointed at me. I'm going to collect you. 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 He screamed so loud the glass shook. We all jumped back, terrified. He kept muttering that as he walked around the cottage home. First, it would be silent, then loud as he would bang his head against the window. Each time he would walk around the house, and he became more and more aggressive in his tone. My mom would follow him to each window, never getting too close, but her eyes always watching him. Andy and I sat on the couch, shaking out of fear until my mom spoke up. He went back into the bushes, she whispered. She ran to the sliding door, making sure it was locked. She covered the windows with the quilts and then grabbed both of us and pulled us into her bedroom. Kids, I love you, but this is real. This is happening. You need to stay together and stay alive. Do you understand me? Do whatever I say. Do you understand me? Her voice was shaky and her hands quivered as she held us. We both nodded our heads, softly crying into her arms. Please, please protect us. To God, I don't want to die. I'm so scared, I said to her. No, baby, you're not going to die. I promise. You're okay. You need to breathe and be strong. I won't let you be his fucking statistic, okay? She asked me, and I shook my head and tried to control myself.
Kids, lean in close. I need to tell you something. Andy and I huddled around our mom. If he comes in, I need the both of you to get to the crawl space. Your father and I made a trapdoor in the closet in case we ever got locked out and needed a way in. You stay in the crawl space and leave only when I tell you to. A loud bang came from the sliding door. We all rushed out of Mom and Dad's room, listening to him smash himself against it. Quietly, I tiptoed to the other room. Outside, he had a fire axe buried in the dirt, along with a blood-soaked, rolled-up carpet. I put my hands to my mouth. There was no doubt in my mind it was a dead body. It had to be. Mom, there's an axe in a body. Mom, what do we do? I remember whimpering to her. Mom, what do we do? What do we do, Mom? What do we do, Mom? He screamed at the top of his lungs. Shut the fuck up, Andy cried out at him. The sound of footsteps went around the house till a sudden smash came against the old wooden door. The hinge on the inside began to give in. I'm going to collect them, Tara, he said. He knew my mom's name. How? Tara, I'll let you live. You can live. Just let me collect them. Sarah, Andy, you don't want your mom to die, do you? Don't you love her? Don't you love her? You know what I will do. His hand kept smashing against the door. His voice was now so calm, in a disgusting attempt to be soothing, convincing. You can all live. Just need rest. I just need the rest. I'm so close. I'm so close. You really want to die, Sarah? You never want to see Tara again? You never want to breathe? You never want to see anyone, anything? Really, Sarah? Are you that greedy, Sarah? Do you want your mom to die, Sarah? Andy pushed himself in front of us. You're a sick piece of shit, buddy. You will kill us all. You're just a twisted, broken little boy. Did Mom and Dad not give you a hug, so now you kill? Fuck you. Andy was red in the face, screaming at the door.
Another loud crash against the door. The wood began to split. All of us were silent. The door was old, wearing down, hinges rusted in the wood that had seen way too many winters. Dollhouse Murder made his way back to the sliding door. Andy walked over to the window I had been looking out. He turned to us. He's just staring at his fucking axe. The glass shattered. Sharp silver of the axe collided into the right side of Andy's face. When he turned back around, he fell to the ground, screaming and writhing at Andy. Mom! He screamed out, to which the killer shouted back, laughing. My mom looked horrified at her baby boy, the boy that she raised with his adorable smile. She held him when he first scraped a knee, cheered for him when he graduated high school. Her boy that she scolded when he came home high or tried to sneak a girl into his room without proper introduction. Sarah could see it in her mom's eyes. The heartbreak that her baby boy, my brother, now laid in his own blood, rolling around in agony, his right eye gone and his face disfigured. She helped Andy into her room, dousing his wounds with alcohol and bandaging it as best she could. I'll never forget the look on her face, that look of enough. She pointed at the trapdoor to both of us. He's going to come in. When I leave, you get your butts down there. Sarah, when you see an opportunity, you take my keys and you run to the car and you both get out of here as fast as you can. I love you. I love you both.
Last time I would ever see my mom, she grabbed a knife from the pantry and waited near the door for him to come in. The crawl space on any normal day would be uncomfortable. Spiders, snakes, mice scurrying around. Yet in that moment with my brother, it was our last resort of feeling some form of safety. There was a crash, a scream, and then silence. An unpleasant, harrowing silence. I needed to hear Mom's voice, her tapping on the crawl space door to let us know it was all okay. But all I could hear was him. You killed her. You killed her, Andy. You killed her, Sarah. I began to sob. Andy put his hand around my mouth. You know what happens next. The same thing I told you from the start. I cry underneath my brother's hands. Then we hear tapping from above us, then laughter. I forgot to mention before, my brother's hand was getting colder, his head nodding off. I try to shove him, but he slumps over. The blood on my hands. It was Andy's. The dollhouse killer was back outside. I could hear him grunt and mumble to himself as he stumbled his way up the stairs and inside the cottage home, our home. Another tap from above, and then something that leaves goosebumps with me to this day. "Look behind you, Sarah," he whispered through the cracks of the trapdoor. "I will bury you here." Written in dried blood behind me.
How could he have had time to do this? How long had he been waiting for? I could feel my heart pounding, shortness of breath. My chest was so heavy. I shook Andy, pleading with him to wake up, begging. But that's all there was. Laughter from above. The crawlspace door snapped open, and I left my brother behind as I began crawling to the nearest grate. I looked behind for my brother, but within seconds the dollhouse murderer was there, crawling after me, that grin on his face, laughing as he squirmed after me. I felt him grab my ankle, and I kicked as hard as I could. He laughed and continued after me, and I continued to fight, to kick and fight him until I was finally free from his grasp. I ripped open the grate. It was already loose, likely where he had snuck in. A blue beam of light came streaking across the midnight sky, the sound of sirens and an officer storming out of their cars, pulling me into their vehicle. One ordered another officer to drive, followed by laughter, and then the sound of gunshots. The dollhouse murderer was a 50-year-old chef at an Italian restaurant. He was a man of zero significance, a man who was despised by his peers at work, verbally violent and unhinged, who would often take days off and extensive holidays to commit his violent acts.
The one summer home that my family and I cherished was now tainted ground. The detectives were appalled when they arrived on scene to see what the dollhouse murderer was making. Each murder he took a different trophy, an arm, a leg, a hand. It was always a piece of the human body. He stitched it all together. All he was missing was another green eye and a left leg. He made a dress and turned a pile of victims into a putrid doll. His only reason for stalking each victim was because he was so attracted to certain parts of their bodies that he would hunt them down and kill them to begin his sick creation. Him and I never met. He simply found my family on social media through a random scroll and stalked us relentlessly. I've been in protective custody with my father for a while now. When rumors of a copycat were immediately stirring in the media, what toils me more than my own grief and injuries? What bothers me most over this senseless act of violence and murder toward my family and several others was his twisted ambitions, his reasoning to why he did what he did. All this violence, butchering, and heartbreak was simply to finish his doll, his human victim doll. Well, I gotta say, you really found a lot of stories about murder tonight. That's gonna be interesting.
It wasn't intentional.
I'm sure it wasn't. But considering that we've already hit an hour, I think we will end tonight's reading here. Alright, crawlers, thank you for joining us for this session. Now I'm going to start using that. Alright, crawlers. We hope you've enjoyed our bedtime readings tonight. And we'll be back next week with something more evil. I think I'll get Fehn to find more stories. Yeah. I'll have her send me a few more, and we'll do them up for you next week. So we hope you've enjoyed these stories about vicious murderers, death, bloodshed, and we hope it has helped you relax together with the sounds of the forest. I know I personally will be sleeping a little worse now that I know streamers and YouTubers may be stalked. 10K subs coming soon, but damn. I don't know if I should be worried, Fehn.
No need to worry at all, my dear friends.
1, 2 pages coming for you. 3, 4, you better lock your door. 5, 6. Alright, if you enjoy this channel, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If we've helped scare you to sleep at least, okay? Feel free to drop a tip via link in the description of the video. You can send super thanks on YouTube or join as a channel member. We will be doing this again, hopefully weekly, but of course, if we can't, then don't worry about it. We will always compensate you with more scares later. And of course, we'll have a different background video for the next one. So, I hope you'll enjoy this. Thank you very much, crawlers. And we'll see you on the next one, okay? Bye-bye.